Spring has sprung and holy cow, real estate market is heating up. I feel like it's faster than ever. If you want to be a seller in spring of 2025, what do you need to know to position yourself to get the most amount of exposure, the most amount of traffic, the biggest sales price at the end of the day? We're going to talk about all the things on the podcast today. Don't miss this episode. Spring 2025 market tips for success. Let's dive in.
You're listening to the Girl Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast, where we invite you to check your ego at the app, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready to dive into all things real estate marketing, social media, friendship, hardship, love, money mindset, and all the things that celebrate you as a badass boss babe.
We're here to encourage you, show up for you, give you a loving kick in the pants when you need it most, and be your soft place to land on the hardest of days. So pull up a seat at our table and get ready to be inspired and start living your best life by design.
Welcome to the Girl Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast. We are so excited you're here.
Okay, girls, let's dive in. All right, bus bench babes, spring has sprung. It has officially sprung. The market has heated up faster than we normally see here in Minnesota. And holy cow, I think every single property that I showed to a buyer last week went into multiple offers, which is crazy. And I just got home. I pulled into my house like an hour ago and I showed a house to some buyers that have been looking for a home, and the agent put the home on the market on Super Bowl Sunday, which seemed really weird to me because that's not how I would have done it. And I got there Monday afternoon and there's already several business cards on the counter. And then when I called her after our showing to ask her a couple of specific questions, she goes, "Oh, we already have 2 offers in hand. And one of them is one of those offers that you just go, holy cow, we got to work with this offer." So while we were walking through the house and my buyers were falling in love with the house, it was essentially already sold, which great for the sellers, right? I mean, we're talking all about sellers here today. For my buyers, and not so great. Not so great at all. So yeah, the market is hot. The market is heating up. And if you have a home that shows really well and is priced competitively, there's a good chance that you're going to sell and maybe even sell in multiple offers. Let's talk about some of the things that are happening in the market here. 1 in 3 homes failed to sell last year. Hear that again. 1 in 3 homes failed to sell last year. And you're like, well, Beth, why is that? You keep on talking about that we're in a seller's market. We are. We still are in a pretty strong seller's market, especially here in the Twin Cities. We have about 2 months worth of inventory, if not less, in most neighborhoods. And in order to get to a balanced inventory, we'd have to have like 5 to 6 months worth of inventory available. And we don't have that. So we are really in more of a seller's market right now. However, there are some homes that didn't sell last year. Here's some of the reasons. Maybe the home was priced too high. Maybe it needed some repairs, or maybe it just wasn't getting the right exposure. Those are probably 3 of the biggest reasons why those homes, the 1 in 3 homes, didn't sell last year across the country. But I would venture to say if those homes go back on the market in 2025, especially spring of 2025, with a great agent and a really good marketing plan, there's a really, really solid chance that they would sell this time around and sellers would be super happy. So let's talk about preparing your home for sale. I would say this is one of the things that feels like when I'm talking to sellers, I'm like, what's the part of the process that has you like most stressed out or worried or giving you pause and making you not pull the trigger? And they're like, well, my house isn't ready. My house isn't even ready for you to see. Oh my gosh, you guys, if I had a penny for any time, $1 for any time somebody has said that to me, I might be retired right now. That is such a such a common thing that I hear is that sellers are embarrassed to have me to their house because their house is not show ready. Guess what? It doesn't have to be show ready. We are simply looking at your home. I want to get eyeballs on your home before you start doing those projects, before you start putting money into things that maybe I think is not the best place to put your money. My goal is always like, how can we get your home the most show ready with the least amount of hassle, the least amount of inconvenience, and the least amount of money out of your pocket? Like, how can we do that and have your home show in its very best light? Well, I think that starts with having me out to your home sooner rather than later. If you are thinking about selling, even if you're thinking about selling, you're like, Beth, I might sell like at the end of 2025. Great. Let's have that conversation now. We can never start that conversation too early. And if there are things that need to get done, or if there are things that I'm recommending, then you give yourself a little bit of runway instead of all of a sudden going, oh my gosh, this new house popped up on the market. We want to buy it. And then, oh crap, we got to sell our house. And then we're just playing the scramble game. And in a situation like that, we're creating so much more stress for you in the process that's just not necessary. So let's start that conversation sooner rather than later. Let's not worry about Beth judging what your house looks like. That's not how I operate. I don't care. I've seen everything that you could possibly imagine in homes. I've even seen a home that had rabbit poop all over because there was a free range bunny in the house. Like, I literally have seen everything. And so there's not going to be any bit of judgment on my part. We're just going to go through and strategically make a plan where I can help set you up for success so I can get you the most amount of money at the end of the day. That's my goal. Let's talk about decluttering. That is going to be a big thing, is that when you open all of your closets and your closets are jam-packed with stuff, the buyer's going to go, oh, wow, this house has no storage. It's like just like this optical illusion for buyers, and it just plants a seed in their head that you don't have enough storage. So if we're selling in springtime or maybe in the summer, can you pack up all of your winter clothes that you're not going to need until next winter when you're in your new house? Can we pack away all the Christmas decor? Can all the Halloween decor get packed away? Is there stuff in your home that you currently don't need to function right now in order to get your home on the market? I'm totally fine with you even stacking up boxes on one side of your garage, a neat and tidy pile. But get it out of the house so your home shows beautifully. And then when buyers peek their head in the garage, they're like, yeah, no big deal. Of course, they're getting their house ready to sell. Or they had to do that in order to get their house ready to sell. So buyers don't even think anything of that. They don't care if the garage is stacked to the rafters full of your stuff that you don't want in the house. Well, it's for sale. Let's talk about staging and things to do to refresh. A lot of times people go through and they want to put all new paint on the walls and all new flooring, but let's really look at this with a critical eye. Could you maybe just refresh a room or two with paint that's like the ones that have like the worst paint? And could we just get the carpets shampooed? I remember when Mark and I we had to sell his house before we built our house. He's like, I got to put all new carpet in here. And I'm like, well, how about we just try to clean it first? And, he had dogs and, just didn't take his shoes off, all that sort of thing. And so we went through, got the carpets professionally cleaned. And he's like, holy cow. And I'm like, yeah, we don't need to replace the carpet. Your carpet's totally fine. And took a couple of hours worth of scrubbing and everything came out. Dog stains, dirt, all of it. And that saved him, $3,000-$4,000 not putting carpet in his whole entire upper level. So you are probably your own worst critic of your home. And you're viewing it through a lens of like, I'm sick of this house. I would love to get new carpet, this and that. I would love a fresh coat of paint top to bottom. But I'm looking at it through a different lens. I'm looking at it through the lens of I am a buyer and what would I notice when I came into this house? Maybe just a shampoo, maybe just touching up the paint, maybe just magic erasering some spots on the wall is all you need. But that's where a professional comes in and can really guide you on the process. Let's talk about staging. I think staging is a really, really powerful tool. Some people have the beautiful luxury of being able to buy their new home before they sell their current home. And I feel like that's like the best case scenario. But then if you move to your new home and your current home is sitting vacant, there's nothing to focus on in your home except for the imperfections. So that's why I always say staging can really, really be your friend. And a staged home can sell for as much as 25% over asking price. Kind of crazy, right? I think it helps evoke an emotion in a home. And let's say your home maybe has some dated features. Maybe some of the core decor isn't totally up to snuff, but maybe you live in a neighborhood that is likely to attract like a young couple or a young family, and maybe they're kind of like that hip, cool vibe. Well, we can stage your home to attract that type of buyer. So that's why I feel like staging is a really powerful tool, because you can stage a home to like look like anything. I'll never forget, a few years ago, there's this gorgeous mid-century modern home for sale. And I showed it to some of my buyers, and we pretty much knew it wasn't going to be a fit, but they're like, well, if we're out looking at houses anyways, can you just add this one to the tour? I'm like, sure, I'd love to, because I would love to see it too. I love a good mid-century modern, beautiful angles, end of a cul-de-sac, gorgeous trees. And when we got in the home, I've never seen so many business cards like lined out, because mid-century moderns are a unicorn here in Minnesota. And anytime one goes for sale, and if it's really good mid-century modern, the crowds flock. The buyers come out of the woodwork. Man, if I could sell a lot of mid-century moderns, that would be amazing. But this home in particular, it was staged perfectly with a stager that specialized in mid-century modern design and decor. And so the home was really cool, really awesome lot, but it did not have any updates. So think mid-century modern with carpet in the house that was probably from the 50s. So like you walked in and it evoked an emotion. Yes, because it was like, it felt like a purist's version of a mid-century modern, and it was stunning, and the view out the back was stunning. But then if you sat in the house long enough and looked around, you're like, well, wait a second. Like literally every single thing needs to be updated in this house. All, light fixtures were cool, but like all the flooring was, 75 years old. 70 plus years old, kitchens, bathrooms, everything. And so you would totally have to update a whole bunch of stuff. But the staging almost made you look past those things. And that agent, I can't even remember what he said he got for offers. Like it was the craziest thing I'd ever heard of. Like 45 offers or something insane. You can't even like go through that many offers in a reasonable amount of time. So yeah, but staging really worked magic on that property. I think had that property, even though it was a mid-century and it was still really cool, had that property not been staged and you walked in and you only saw everything that was really old and outdated, I think it would have been a different story. I don't think there would have been like a million offers, and I don't think the sales price would have gone as high as what it did. But staging really worked magic on that property. So I love staging. Another thing, like vacant homes, for instance, sometimes it doesn't make sense to stage a completely vacant home top to bottom. So if it's like a newer construction, let's say a townhome where the price point doesn't fully warrant a stage, I love to stage bathrooms and kitchens, so at least it softens things a little bit. And when a buyer walks in, it doesn't feel like it's just like this new construction home with nothing in it. So even just doing partial staging can be a really powerful tool. Staging living room, dining room, kitchen, primary bedroom can be a really powerful tool, but staging overall is really awesome. I love even just going through a home with my sellers and say, okay, let's move your stuff around. Let's do this. Let's do that. Do you have a rug we can put here? How about let's move some art around? And sometimes I have clients that have really beautiful furniture, but then they have no accessories. They have nothing extra in their house, and they're just more minimalists, I guess we would say. So in that case, I say, all right, let's use your furniture. Let's use all your stuff. And then I'm going to bring in staging things. We've talked about it on the podcast before. It was a house listing I got last year. It had been on the market with an agent and it wasn't selling. And the seller reached out and he's like, Beth, I'm desperate. Like, please come over. And so I went over there and he stayed in the kitchen. I said, let me walk around the house just by myself and like view it through the lens of a buyer. He's like, sure. Came back to the kitchen and I said, I know why your house isn't selling. And he's like, what is it? And I said, it looks like a bachelor pad. And yes, he was a bachelor, a single dad with just a boy. It totally looked like a bachelor pad. It even smelled like a boy's house. It smelled kind of locker room smell. Like there wasn't anything about the house that was soft and warm and fuzzy that would appeal to a woman or appeal to a couple or a single gal or a single mom. And I'm like, ugh. It's kind of gross. And he's like, I can't believe that's what's happening. He's like, I have a new roof and new siding and new windows. He's like, why isn't that counting for anything? And I said, because when you walk into the house, yeah, having new window siding and roof is great. It's super, super awesome. But when you walk into the house, you're not evoking any emotion whatsoever. And who makes the decision on a house 9 times out of 10? The woman. And he's like, I'm having a hard time wrapping my brain around this. And there were some swear words that were involved. And I said, do you want me to cut it? Do you want me to shoot it to you straight? Or do you want me to sugarcoat this? Like, what do you need here for me to understand, for me to get my point across that that's what's happening here? And I said, and this is, okay, mind you, this is someone that I've known for years. I said, okay, you have a male agent. You've had a male agent this whole time. I said, has he said anything to you about any of this? And he's like, no. And I go, who else have you interviewed? And he's like, 2 other guys. And I go, well, maybe there's something to be said about that. I said, I'm coming into this with my design degree and from a woman's perspective. And this house looks like a bachelor pad and we need to unbachelor it. And he's like, okay, whatever. He basically like threw his hands up and he's like, I'm going to take your word for this. And I think it's crazy, but I'm going to trust the process. I'm like, okay, please just trust the process. I had him paint one room. The kitchen was this weird, like lime green color and kind of threw off the rest of the decor in the house and then brought in, he had great furniture, but like no accessories. And he had like, the air fryer on the kitchen counter and like his toothbrush by the kitchen sink. And I'm like, oh my God, this is such a dude house. And so really just added some soft touches, great bedding, nice rugs, kitchen got painted, put some new lights out in the front of the house. I just like sent him from Amazon to his house and he's like, I'll install them over the weekend. Send me everything to the house and I'll make it happen. Put some new hardware on the kitchen cabinets because he had hardware that was probably from the 70s. And I'm like, we can just change the hardware and it's going to change the whole entire vibe of your painted kitchen. And when the house was done, Carrie and I were there like top to bottom. It took us hours. And we sent him away and he came back and he's like, holy shit. He's like, I literally can't. He's like, I can't believe what you just did to my house. And I'm like, yeah. Now are you getting what I'm talking about with like, this has to appeal to a woman? And he's like, I'm getting it, Beth. I'm totally getting it. And we ended up selling his house. He moved across the country and all is well with the world. But it took a while to even get him to wrap his brain around the fact that the big ticket items that he had done in his house that he thought would be the things that would sell his home were not selling his home. His home didn't appeal to the person making the decision about the homes. Other things I like to look at when I'm touring your home while we're getting it ready is like, are there things that are super easy for you to fix, but maybe you've just been living with it and you're not even noticing it as a thing anymore? Like a ripped screen, for instance. Ripped screens are so inexpensive to fix, but all of a sudden it makes the buyers look like you really take care of your home. And buyers are like, oh, well, when random little ripped screens are showing up in houses, you're like, why? This is like a $5 fix. This is like a $10 fix. And they have the kits at Home Depot and Menards and like any big box store. Or you can usually take them to one of those small Ace Hardware type places and they'll fix it for you relatively cheap. What about things like having older mechanicals in your home? You're like, well, Beth, we have an original furnace and we really would like to not replace the furnace. Well, can we get your furnace serviced right before you go on the market? So now we have proof, not just you saying, well, my furnace works just fine. We have proof from the furnace professionals that say, yep, we've done a tune-up on the furnace and it's operating just fine. So we aren't going to get nickeled and dimed for things like that. I'm looking at your house through a different lens than what you are looking at your house and viewing your house as. And they're just things that might not even be obvious to you. But if we can fix little things and if you can get things serviced that are older but still run just fine, and we can get your home show ready and stage it appropriately, oh my gosh, there's no stopping us. One of the biggest mistakes to avoid when you're getting ready to sell your home is setting your price too high. It truly can be the kiss of death. And many times I hear sellers say, well, we really would like to price it high to give us a little bit of room for negotiation. And I get that. You know, we are not always guaranteed that we're going to get an asking price or a multiple offers situation. However, the reality is that method generally backfires. And then you're chasing the market and doing price reductions and usually sell for less than what you originally wanted to sell for, which is super disappointing. So I don't want that for you. Realtor.com says 20% of sellers, that's 1 in 5, had to reduce their price last year in 2024. Why is that? Well, because they didn't get the price right, right out of the gate. And buyers are savvy enough to know what a home should be priced at because buyers are sitting there doing research forward, backwards. Like they're on all the sites. They're on Zillow, they're on Redfin, they're on homes.com, they're on realtor.com. They're on all of these sites that have so many different algorithms. They all have the Zillow Zestimate and all of that sort of thing. So like they know what homes should be priced at. So if you as a seller think you're going to like pull the wool over the buyer's eyes, it's just not going to happen. Buyers are just simply too savvy. Also, where with mortgage rates are right now and where home prices are right now, buyers are already really stretched. Their budgets are really, really stretched. So when a home is priced too high and the seller's thinking, well, they can just negotiate it, a lot of times buyers are like, well, I'm just going to go look at the next house that feels like it's priced accurately, which is a huge disappointment. We just simply don't want to chase a buyer away because we were priced too high. Another thing that I think factors in here is that Minnesota nice thing is that a lot of buyers really love homes, but maybe they are not super jazzed about the price. But yet they're too kind and too nice to say anything and to offer less because they don't want to be offensive to the seller. Instead of just saying, okay, well, I do like this house. I like the area. I like the updates. I like this. I like the school district. I like that. I just don't want to pay the price that the sellers are asking. So why wouldn't you just offer the price that you want to pay? If a home has been sitting on the market for a while, let's be clear here. If a home has been sitting on the market for 1 second, the seller is unlikely going to reduce the price. A seller usually at that point has a price in mind that they want. And a seller usually has to sit on the market for a hot second in order to like get a little bit more bigger dose of reality and go, well, maybe we didn't get the price right. Maybe that strategy of starting higher has backfired on us. And maybe we should consider doing a price reduction. Or maybe the sellers are just simply waiting, but they have that magic sales price in mind. And maybe if you just offered what you want to offer, at least you would get to the conclusion right away and find out, like, you're like, okay, well, I would pay X for it. Let's see if the seller will take X for it. Well, like, no, the seller really wants Y for it. Well, I mean, maybe the buyer would pay Y. So, and this is a great strategy for the homes that have been sitting on the market for, I would say, a week or longer, is go in and see the seller's motivation. Especially in a hot market when all the houses around a house are selling really quickly, all of a sudden that seller that's sitting is getting really nervous and they're like, crap, what's wrong with my house? And a lot of times buyers are thinking the same thing. Well, if that house hasn't sold, what's wrong with it? Well, there's probably nothing wrong with it, but maybe the price wasn't correct right out of the gate. Maybe the home didn't show super great. Maybe the sellers didn't allow the home to have really easy access for showings. Like there's a million things that could be going on that are the reason why a home hasn't gone under contract. And maybe that's a home that you really want to take a peek at and go in and see, well, maybe the seller would pay some closing costs. Maybe they would pay for a 2-1 buy down so you can have lower interest rates for 2 years. There's a lot of different scenarios that are great for buyers, but not so great for sellers if you overprice your home and have it sit on the market for longer than everyone else is sitting on in the market. It's interesting that was sitting on the market a little bit longer. And I've had buyers say this to me over the years, or like, well, what's wrong with that house? And there might be nothing wrong with the house. It might just simply be overpriced. But other things that people think about is there a problem with the house? But maybe is a seller difficult to work with? Like, what is it? Why is everyone else not jumping on it? And it also kind of creates that in the flip side, when homes go into multiple offers, it's almost like the mindset with buyers, well, if it's good enough for those 3 other offers, it must be good enough for me too. So it's interesting how like a lot of buyers like get on the bandwagon. But from a seller standpoint, obviously every seller wants to get as much money out of their home as possible, right? They all do. I do. Every time I sell, it's what everybody wants. But how can you price your home strategically so you get the most amount of eyeballs and you get the most amount of exposure, you get the most amount of traffic with showings and open houses, and yet still get that top dollar price? So that's finding that magic sweet spot in your pricing that maybe you can get multiple offers. But I always say it only takes one showing and it only takes one offer. You just never know. I'm also going to say in this real estate market, who you work with, it truly, truly matters. Stats came out a couple of weeks ago that felt like it broke my brain. In 2024, 74% of the real estate agents that are licensed in the country sold 0 homes. 23% of agents sold between 1 and 10 houses, which is also, again, not great. If you sold 1 or 2 houses in all of 2024, how can you possibly be an expert? You're not in the trenches enough to be an expert as a listing agent. So sellers, like this is something that you should consider and you should think about, and you should talk to and ask the agents that you want to work with. Don't just reach out to your cousin Becky because she just got licensed 6 months ago and you're like, oh yeah, I totally want to work with her and give her the business. I get that. Everybody has to be new at some point, but is she being mentored? Is she on a team? Is anybody helping her muddle her way through her first couple of sales? Honestly, you should really be asking the hard questions. You should be interviewing agents and asking them the hard questions. How do they market properties? How many homes have they sold? When wonky things happen in a transaction, how are they going to troubleshoot that? How are they going to get you to the closing table successfully? Those are questions that any good real estate agent that has been in the business for a minute or longer should be able to answer without hesitation. The stats just keep getting crazier. 0.14. So like not even a quarter of a percent, like 0.14% of agents across the country sold over 45 houses. I think you should be interviewing the 0.14. I think those are the agents that you should be interviewing to see, like, how do they do it? How are they successful? How are they serving their clients? How are they getting you top dollar on your sale? Those are the agents that you want to interview. Lastly, let's talk about inventory. Inventory is going to be up in 2025, which really is good news. I mean, buyers are so frustrated. I've been so frustrated especially for like the last 5 years. going into multiple offer after multiple offer after multiple offer and really not having a balanced market, really staying in a strong seller's market for honestly like the last 10 years, especially here in the Midwest. Home prices across the country are supposed to be up. The home sales pace is supposed to go. Last year, there was 4.6 million homes that sold, and that number is supposed to bump up to 5.2 million homes sell across the country in 2025. So it's exciting to see those types of numbers, but it's really interesting. 70% of the sellers out there right now are people that are sitting in a home that has a mortgage, have an interest rate under 4%. So what does that look like? Well, you might be thinking, well, Beth, I'm really having a hard time giving up my 4% interest rate. Well, could you turn your current home into a rental instead of selling it? I mean, I'm talking to a lot of our sellers about that. Could you have an investment property and just use that and have it be, part of your business strategy and your wealth building strategy, and then buy your next home? I know we're talking about sellers in this episode and I'm talking myself out of business, but maybe it makes more sense for you to rent your home and keep that really, really low interest rate. But sometimes people just don't have the luxury to do that. And it might make sense for you to give up your 4% interest rate in order to be able to get the home that serves your family better. I'm having a lot of conversations with sellers that are like, oh my God, we're busting at the seams. Our house is too small. We're working with a lot of right sizers, and they're like, my gosh, we're living in a house that's too big now that all the kids are gone, and we don't need a 2-story. We really would love a 1-story. So really go through and, do maybe like a pros and cons list. Like, okay, what's the pros and what's the cons of selling right now? And does this make the most sense for us? I do get questions pretty regularly like, Beth, is now a good time to buy? Is now a good time to sell? And is the sky falling? Like, what's going to happen? Well, home prices keep going up year after year. So if selling and buying your next place makes sense for you, there's a good chance that even though you're not going to maybe have that interest rate that you currently have on your current home, that as home prices go up, and hopefully there's going to be a chance at some point for you to refinance and to save money every month. A stat I heard recently that was really encouraging to hear was only 1% of the sales across the country last year were lender-owned homes, meaning homes that were in foreclosure. So if foreclosures are not skyrocketing, that number was way into the double digits back when the market crashed in 07 and 08. So only to see 1% of the sales being lender-owned is super, super encouraging. Sellers, here's some things we're seeing. Showings are up here, and these are stats for the Midwest and specifically here in Minnesota. The rate of growth has really flattened out. Home prices are not skyrocketing double-digit percentage like they were during COVID, which I'm really glad about because that certainly was not sustainable on any level. So when a home appreciates between 3 and 5% a year, that's great. That's like normal appreciation. Showings are up across the board. Showings are up really greatly in homes that are over 300,000. And it was kind of interesting because I would have thought like homes under 300,000. The problem is like those starter homes, there isn't hardly any of them for sale. And then when they go on the market, of course, showings are up because there's so few of those homes for sale. Another interesting topic is boomer housing. We talked about people right sizing and sellers like living in homes that no longer serve them because they're too big. It's too much of a house. Maybe it's too much of a lot. Maybe it's too much of everything. I think that there's a ton of boomers living in homes that no longer serve them, floor plan wise, size wise. I don't know. A lot of people are like, well, I would just love to have a smaller home in Minnesota and then maybe a home in Texas, Florida, Arizona, and be snowbirds. But boomers are not selling their homes as fast as what a lot of the reports were saying the last couple of years. I read a report last year that said something about that we're going to see a tsunami of boomers selling their houses. And I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But it would really be great if more boomers started selling their homes, because those are the homes that those move up buyers want to move to. Generally, they were in the good school districts that the boomers bought in when their kids were little. So a lot of times those are the big 2-story homes. So it's that home that like that young couple or that single person like moved into and then met their person and started a family. And then they want to move up to like that next size neighborhood and have just like a bigger house with more room, usually a bigger yard, many times in really great school districts. Like we do not have enough of those homes for sale also. All these little nuancy things like in and of themselves, you're like, oh, well, yeah, that's great. But when you take all these little things and start adding them up, it really makes sense why we have such low inventory across the country. Yeah, boomers are staying in their houses longer. Payments are up $1,000 in the last 4 years. With buyers, their monthly payments up $1,000 a month in the last 4 years because interest rates have gone up. So affordability is such a big issue right now. 70% of the people that have mortgages across the country have interest rates under 4%. Yep, that's preventing a lot of people, a lot of sellers from saying, okay, well, time to pull the trigger. So it makes sense. All of this totally makes sense why we have such low inventory. So I always say, the time needs to be right for you. The time doesn't need to be right for me or anyone else. Do you need a bigger house? Do you need a smaller house? Are you in the middle of a divorce? Are you moving across the country and relocating? Are you going to be multi-generational? We had 2 multi-generational houses for sale in the last few months, and both of them had younger families with parents moving in with them. You know, like I've talked about this before on the podcast. I live in a multi-generational home, and it totally makes sense for my family when my in-laws are here part of the year. They always have a landing place, and they have a home that we take care of, and it works out super, super great. So what is it for you? If you really want to be a seller this year, what is it for you that is causing the thoughts, and like, what's the motivation for wanting to be a seller? And then where are you going to go next? I think there's a lot of conversations to be had, and I love to have those deep dive conversations with sellers and look at things from all the angles. You might not have sold a house in a long time, and things have really changed. So then let's have a conversation. Or if you're in another part of the country, let me connect you with an awesome rock star agent that works with clients how I do, where we can really, really like peel back the layers of the onion to get to the root of like, why do you want to move? Why is this important to you? What is this going to do for your family, whoever is involved in the move with you? And how can we position you to really win in this market? Get your home prepared so it looks like as beautiful and as magical and as glorious as we can make your home look. How can we position your pricing to take advantage of the market and get the most amount of exposure and showings and open house traffic? And how can we get you to your goal? That's what I want to do. At the end of the day, get your home sold and get you to where you want to be next, so you can just keep checking things off that bucket list for 2025. If you ever have questions about the market, I would love to have a conversation with you. I love talking about the market. I love researching the market, and I really love working with sellers to help position them to win. So let's make that happen in 2025. So until next time, bus bench babes, keep your face off a bus bench and keep being the badass boss babes that you are.
Okay, girls, are you feeling as inspired as we are? We're over here cheering you on because you just finished another episode of the Girl, Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast.
If you want more, head over to girlgetyourfaceoffabusbench.com for show notes and more episodes. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. They mean the world to us, and they're what keep us going.
Girl, thanks for being here.